I want to talk about Kerry Katona. I was with her for an hour last year and did a special. I found it concerning. I asked her to her face, "Are you okay?" She insisted she was. How do you feel? You know better than I do.
Well, I've been very close to Kerry for the last 5 years, and I know about her childhood, about the foster parents, about her mother, who's a self-admitted drug addict, introduced Kerry to drugs at a very young age, etc. All she's been through. The heartache of the breakup of her marriage with Brian, the fact that she took briefly to drugs then, drinking, the bipolar she suffered from, the depression which she still suffers from, all of the dramas, including recently the bankruptcy. She's a very, very sensitive person who's had a real mountain to climb. I've got a lot of time for her, and we've been very close. I worry for her from time to time because she's got a very addictive personality, and she should be having regular advice, counselling, treatment, particularly for her depression and bipolar, etc. And I'm hoping that the older she gets, that the better she will get. But she's a fragile person and someone who I worry and constantly worry about. In October, when the This Morning interview went out, I think a lot of people really have since then have been increasingly concerned for her health and her happiness. I certainly am.
And should she have done it? Should she be in the public eye at this stage, making MTV documentaries?
Well, the problem is that this is what Kerry wants to do. Obviously, because of her financial situation, she needs to do. Sometimes the answer to that is yes, Alex. Sometimes the answer to that is no, because with Kerry it can change from one day, even a few hours. That's the nature of the person. So it's very difficult to give a yes or no answer to that. She is a natural exhibitionist. She's a natural comedy actress, as far as I'm concerned. And, I've worked very hard and closely with Kerry over the last 5 years to try and keep her online, and also to protect her from the excesses of herself and those around her. And most of the time, I think it's got better, but then sometimes things happen. And because of the nature of the beast, and she is and suffers from bipolar, from depression, she suddenly goes back down again. So it's an ever-changing situation, and she's always going to need protection. We've tried to provide that as much as possible over the last few years, although in more recent time it's got increasingly difficult.
And you can understand why people were concerned with the This Morning interview. There was something odd.
I totally understand. People phone me, fans of hers, her sponsors, lots of people, genuinely concerned, because they generally are very fond of Kerry, worried about what they saw and what they heard. Kerry, Mark say it's purely down to medication, but the problem is, what's the public perception? Well, the public perception, as you and I both know, is very different from that. And that's what I have to deal with, because that's what the sponsors are concerned about. Iceland, MTV themselves, who set up the interview. If I'd have been with her, if I'd have been involved with this interview, no way would I have allowed it to have taken place, because she was clearly slurring her words. And whether it was down to medication, which is what they claim, that that's not how it's going to be perceived. So, it's a question of again, anticipate a problem and take care of it. Prevention is better than cure in that case.
So it shouldn't have happened. Somebody should have stepped in and said, today's not the right day to do this.
Absolutely right. Mark was with her. Someone from MTV, they should have said there's no way she can go on. We know it's down to medication, but she's slurring her words. People will put more into it and see more into it, and that's exactly what's happened. And that was very damaging and also very worrying.
And she is in that bracket where we do seem to care as people. When I opened my interview with her last year and I said, we love you, and I think we genuinely do. We do care about her. But then you see something like that and you start wondering, it's just something that, you're right, should probably never have taken place.
No, there's always that element of self-destructiveness about Kerry, and there always have been, which is, it's a fact of life with a lot of people. But she goes from on top of the world to the bottom, the bottom of the ocean in no time at all. And, that is down in no small way to her bipolar. And I think, the past and the insecurities, her mum, her upbringing, father, nowhere to be seen, foster parents, all kinds of tragic things going on, which is written about and referred to many times. Totally in love with Brian McFadden, and he let her down. So you can understand. I've got a lot of time for Kerry, and I sincerely hope that she will, get on top, and that things will get back to where we all want them to be for her.
I presume the idea of the interview on This Morning was to show her physically in shape, and then all you needed her to come across was mentally in shape, and everybody thought she was back on form.
I mean, the whole point of the MTV show was called Whole Again. It was meant to show Kerry healthy, happy, looking good, having a great time. She looked good in terms of, the papers, the pictures, the OK magazine, all of those. Obviously, from a physical point of view, she's, lost a lot of weight and looking great. But in terms of how she was, facially, but also vocally, that's worried an awful lot of people. And I can understand. The girl in my office, and one of the girls in my office that watched the interview, was crying because she's worked very closely with Kerry, thinks the world of her, and knew, how it came across.
Is there anybody giving her any psychological help?
Mark.
Is he the man to do it?
Well, that remains to be seen. He's the closest person to her. She's madly in love with him. Personally, I would like her to get back and have the regular medical advice and support that she was having previously to the birth of little Max.